Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajanana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Kadamba Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. What is on the board? No, just the number. Adi. Thank you. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So, we'll read from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, from the 3rd chapter, text number 15. Vyaktakari Bhagavat Kahe Bara Bara. Kali Yuga Dharma Nama Sankirtana Shara. Vyaktakari Bhagavat Kahe Bara Bara. Kali Yuga Dharma Nama Sankirtan Sara. Vyaktikare Bhagavata Kahe Bara Bara. Kali Yuga Dharma Nama Sankirtana Shara. That's Chananivas. That's Chananivas. Ladies. Hare Krishna. So the picture on the screen is Jananivas. That's not Pangajangi. In case you didn't know. Oh, you're working on it. Yeah. No, once you know once you know the difference, it's easy to see. But in the beginning, it can be tough. Okay, let's read some translation. Vyakta, evident. Kari, making. Bhagavate, in Srimad Bhagavatam. Kahe, they say. Bara bara, time and time again. Kali Yuge, in the age of Kali. Dharma, the religion. Nama Sankirtan, congregational chanting of the holy name. Sara, the essence. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is repeated and clearly said that the essence of religion in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Text 51. Itti dvapare urvisha stuvanti jagadishwaram nanatantra vidanena kalavapiyatashinu. O king, in this way people in Dwapara Yuga worship the Lord of the universe. In Kali Yuga, they also worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the regulations of the revealed scripture. Kindly now hear of that from me. This verse is spoken by the saint Kadamba in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll take one more verse. Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam. Yes, that's him. Sangam Pansastra Parsadam. Yagya Sankirtana Prajer Yanyanti Hisumedasa. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Okay. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyanandana Salakaya Shakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this age of Kali, in particular, the chanting of the holy name is the essence of all religion. It is said that Kali Kale Nama Rupe Krishna Avatare. It is said that in this age of Kali, the Lord appeared as an avatar, as an incarnation in the form of the holy name. And in particularly, then it is mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat that the holy name appeared in every home in Navadvip. So in this way, we can understand that this particular incarnation of the Lord appeared also in Navadvip, along with the incarnation of Lord Chaitanya. But that this incarnation appeared in every home, whereas Lord Chaitanya appeared in the home of Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. We understand that in this way, the holy name is most merciful and reaching out to all. And it is the essence of this movement. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is explaining, he said that without Sridham, Srinam is not fully manifest. So in other words, he points out that particularly in the Holy Dham, the name is actually manifesting its full glories. And that, in other words, the pastimes of the Lord are revealed in the Holy Dham. We remember that Srila Prabhupada once mentioned to Giriraj Maharaj that there were two major agenda items of the Hare Krishna movement. And one of these agenda items was Harinam Sankirtan. And in particularly, Prabhupada mentioned book distribution. And he spoke about Harinam Sankirtan, seeing books as Sankirtan, as the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said, so the wide distribution of Harinam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting, therefore distribution, not chanting alone in bhajan, but Sankirtan, congregational chanting. And in this way, increasing that congregational chanting. And Prabhupada said that the second agenda item of this movement is to reveal and develop Sridham Mayapur. Of course, Sridham Mayapur is eternal, and therefore I say reveal, because it's already there. But due to the fact that our eyes are covered by illusion, we cannot see. Sridham Mayapur. But by making a transcendental city, the capital, the spiritual capital of the world in Sridham Mayapur, that transcendental nature of the Dham becomes more manifest in the world. And Prabhupada said these two items are the principal items of his mission, of the mission of this movement. Pangajangri Prabhu somehow or other took his spiritual birth in Sridham Mayapur. It is there where his heart really came home in in Krishna consciousness. It is there where the holy Dham became so much part of him. Pankajangri once said that, he said, when we were beginning, when we joined, he said, in the beginning, I used to think that this movement, that the Hare Krishnas were too negative about the world, that it wasn't so bad, right? That, the material world was, well, that there were many nice things, and basically, he said, I couldn't see it, that it was so bad as they made it out to be. I was having a good time. And he said, but then when he got involved in the Hare Krishna movement, he said it was really austere in those days. He said it was very austere. He said, but at the same time, it was also very exciting, because there was a mission, and there was really a very strong spirit, a missionary spirit of we are developing something here. The very early days of Srila Mayapur had already moved along with the devotees staying in Prabhupada's Bhajan Kutir during the flood in the rafters, right, under the straw roof. That he missed that part. One reason was because of this idea, well, it's not so bad, the material world. Yes, his brother, Jananivas, he had been to India before, and he came back and he told his brother about India. So they were both very attracted to India, and wanted to go again. It said in due course of time, Jananivas, the elder brother, he became involved with Srila Prabhupada. Pankajangri describes it in a dream, and he says that he had a dream, and in this dream there was a stream. And then an elderly person, not exactly looking like Prabhupada, but he knew it was Prabhupada, came and said to the two brothers, come, I'll help you across the river. And it was not a big river, actually. It was just a stream. And and Jananivas immediately went for it. And Prabhupada helped him across the stream and carried his luggage across. And then it was time for Pankajangri. And then Pankajangri said, no, it's okay. I can do it alone, like you are an old man. And it's not necessary that you take all this trouble to help me across this stream. It's just a stream. I'm a good swimmer. I can do it. And he went by himself, but then he got stuck in the middle of the stream, and he was like, and he wasn't going forward at all. And he tried to turn back, and he couldn't turn back either. And then he was panicking. Then he realized he was stuck. So Jananivas, when he became aware of Prabhupada's teachings, he immediately took it. And they traveled to India, and somehow or other, they were separated for a moment, and then Jananivas was supposed to be in Calcutta and with the Hare Krishnas. So his brother came to visit him. And then when he came into the temple, he saw this sadhu. Right? I mean, India is full of sadhus, and he was thinking, what is this sadhu doing here? And then he saw him from the back. He saw the saffron. He said, what is this sadhu doing here? And then the sadhu turned around, and then it was his brother. And then he realized, whoa, he's become a sadhu. He wasn't immediately ready to become a sadhu. He went back. He went back to London. And he said he was also a little bit into some other Indian guru. They had been in Rishikesh and this, that, and he was into the light. You know what I mean? Like, as a little bit into the light. Yes. And he said, and then he had again a dream of Prabhupada. And in that dream, he saw Prabhupada totally effulgent. So effulgent, he said, wow, he's got the light. He's got the light. And then he decided, yes. And then he started getting involved with a temple in Bury Place, and he's in the UK. And then, of course, after some time, joined his brother. So I was thinking, what am I going to say about Pangajangri? I think I must have spoken to him at least 100 times, but I can't remember. I can't remember what we discussed. It wasn't, all I remember, it wasn't like, it was often very practical. It was about practical things, oftentimes. Because of the two brothers, he was the more earthly one. He was more the one, on the ground, and Jananivas was more, and is more philosophical, and is more kind of in that deep contemplation. Right? Jananivas is a very contemplative person who is always thinking very deeply about Krishna, and when we hear him speak, that always comes through, some deep thinking, very deep thinking, and he sees the whole world in that way. Pankajangri was much more simple, right? Much more simple, much more almost ordinary, right? And therefore I was thinking, what am I going to say about Pangajangri today? And I thought I should speak about how Pangajangri was simultaneously a very ordinary person and simultaneously a very special person. And I thought I built my talk about that, around that, and see what will come out. I have no idea, but that is a strategy where I'm gonna go. Because in one sense, he was a very ordinary person. He also said that himself. He said, like, I don't think I've really changed very much, right? He said, I don't really think I've changed very much. I think I'm still pretty much the same. I always was, I'm still... He says, yeah, I guess your character doesn't really change. Your character doesn't really change. He said, but then, his whole life changed. His whole life changed. Just 48 years in Sridhar Mayapur, being there in the Holy Dham, and seeing... And being not only in the Holy Dham, which is such a blessing. Because when we are in the Holy Dham, then the presence of the spiritual world is so manifest. The Dham, after all, is non-different from the spiritual world. But it is covered by a layer of Yogamaya. But through that layer of Yogamaya, the effulgence of the Dham is manifesting. And therefore, it's very strong experience. Even a temple is like that. Right? A temple is not just the place where the deities are, but the temple is a holy place. Here we are in Germany, in Simhachalam, and we know that Lord Nrsingadev's influence is present. It's present not just here in this temple room, but it is present on the surrounding property, and not only there. It's present in the whole area. The whole area's got a bit of an Nrsingadev touch here. Right? It's like that. So Krishna manifests his mercy like that. The deity manifests the spiritual world. And the Dham is the spiritual world, and it manifests through that layer of Yogamaya. So one who is residing in the Dham is then automatically the focus very much shifts to the spiritual world. Then worship the deity as well. Worship the deities, then the altar is the spiritual world. Right? As soon as we are on the altar, we are in the spiritual world. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains, when Krishna descends into this world, the spiritual world also descends with him. So were these two brothers, right? Part of Lord Chaitanya's greater plan. Part of Lord Chaitanya's plan to establish Sridham Mayapur and to establish the deity worship in Sridham Mayapur. And how nice, they gave their life in that service. Nowadays, the world looks at Pangajangri as the pujari of Lord Nrsingadev, but I can't see him like that, because that came only later. That was only in 86, he said, 86, 87, that Nrsingadev came. I was also there at the time. I built the temple of Lord Nrsingadev. And I unloaded Lord Nrsingadev from the truck with my man. When he arrived in sand, right? They transported him in sand. Lord Nrsingadev, they didn't want to make such a deity of Lord Nrsingadev, because it's in his most angry form, just coming out of the pillar. They said, this is too much, he cannot be worshipped. But then the Stapati, the one who carved the deity, was quite transcendental and said, no, but this is okay. He can be installed in Mayapur because in the holy Dham, the deity takes the mood of the holy Dham. So although he is very angry, he'll become very merciful at the same time. He'll take the mood of Lord Chaitanya, of the predominant. So that's a very important point that Stapati made. Because we can see that this is a fact. That deity of Lord Nrsingadev is very merciful. Pangajangri was especially known for telling stories about the miracles, right? He had lots of miracle stories about the deities, especially about Lord Jagannath and about Lord Nrsingadev. So many. And then Lord Nrsingadev would immediately answer prayers. These two pujaris, they were living so close with the deities, just sleeping in the deity area, practically speaking, for so many years. Right? And basically, the pujari had a room right behind the paraphernalia room, and that's where they would stay, right? So it's like their living room was, as soon as they got up, the living room was the paraphernalia room, basically. That's how I had to see. They just were living with the deities. They were not just coming down to do some service on the altar. They were just like full time with the deities. Pangajangri once told me, he said, I think in our last life, we were husband and wife. And he said, and I was the wife. And he was like, they were, of course, so together. But we see that although they were so together, that Janani was joined alone. Janani was, although the attachment between them as twins, right, is obvious, right? The intimate relationship between them two is something more than just ordinary. Because although all twins obviously must have a special attachment to each other, these are spiritual twins, right? So the bond was really a spiritual bond, right? And that makes it something totally different, because spiritual means eternal, right? So the bond of these brothers is eternal and not at all something of this world. Whereas otherwise in Bhagavatam we read how how partners, right, to use such a word, come together in this world and are like two straws that float together for a little while in the river of time before they're separated by the current, right? And that can be some lives, I mean, you hear like you do the yakya and the wife to be, or I think it comes after the garlands. It's already wife walks around the husband 7 times. That represents the 7 lives that will stay together. God, as I was going through this ceremony once in my life, I felt that at that time. Whew, I was sweating. But these brothers, they never got married. They never had any other focus than simply Krishna. Pangajangri was following the lead of Jananivas, very much so, very much. He was not in the mood of a competitor, although they were like brothers. So sometimes Pangajangri would correct something if Jananivas remembered something wrong, but it was very much a dharmic relationship, reminding of the Pandavas, reminding how you read about this, how the younger brother serves the elder brother and how they all served Yudhisthira. And it really was like that between these two brothers. Pangajangri was always serving, assisting Jananivas, who was the leader and giving the vision. And Pangajangri was satisfied with that. There was no sense of like competition. No, that was what his role, and he was happy to have that role. Pangajangri was the one who was dealing with some more practical matters in the deity department. He was keeping some sort of accounts, very simple, but at least, he's keeping track of money coming in for the deities and coming out, and of course in the beginning that was quite simple, and as that became bigger, there also came bigger managers and who had more to help. But Pangajangri remained the practical personality. In 1985, Mayapur was going through major changes in its organization, and one of the biggest changes was that it was felt that Mayapur had become too big to be managed by one temple president, because there were so many things going on that were not under the temple president. Like, for example, the Gurukul. And the Gurukul was growing. Bhaktivinoda Purna Maharaj really went for the Vedic village, and it began to evolve, and that was separate. The Samadhi and all the construction with International Fund, that was separate. That was me. And then there were many things that were separate. The whole master plan development and the purchasing of the land, that was separate. So it was felt that the project could no longer be represented by the temple president alone. So that's when Mayapur became managed by a management council instead of a president. And yes, Pankajangri became one of the members of that council. Right? I was also one of the members of that council, and so was Bhaktivinoda Purna Maharaj. We were meeting in Mayapur in the GBC meeting room, and there were sofas, and Bhaktivinoda Purna Maharaj, who has so many chadars, right? He would always tuck himself in on one of the sofas. He could sort of lie on the sofa in his chadars, and they were kind of interesting meetings. There was one senior devotee, the regional secretary, Satadanya, and him and he had been a manager there for a long time. And somehow or other, between himself and myself, there always was a difference of opinion, I mean, always, somehow or other. I don't know why. If I thought black is great, then he thought, no, it's white. If I thought it's white, he thought black. I remember one particular fight we had. We had a fight all the time. And one particular fight was about the Bhakta program. And the Bhakta program was on the boundary wall rooms in Mayapur. And the Bhakta program had put a request to us for more space, more rooms, because they said the rooms are full. So the regional secretary said, no way, no, they're not getting any more space because there is no space, And I said, well, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Said, we are the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and our purpose is to make devotees, right? Turn the whole world into devotees. So when the bhakta rooms are full, that's a good sign, right? It means we're making a lot of devotees. And then I said, and then I also thought that Mayapur had more rooms than any other temple in ISKCON. He said, what do you mean, I mean, you're talking about the guest houses. I said, oh, I see what you mean. It's more important to make money than to make devotees. And then, whoo! There was particularly a lot of fireworks, a lot, in that meeting. I mean, it was very hot, right? And the volume of the voices was going very high. And Pankajangri was just sitting there looking left and looking right, like sort of like as if it was a tennis game, looking at the ball, what is going on here? Like, what are they doing? Anyway, so I went for darshan later on, of Radha Madhava. And I'd also built the altar, and there's this stage. I built this stage, right? Surabi designed it like that, and there was a stage. So you stood now so far from Radha Madhava, not like before. Before Radha Madhava was so close, But when Radha Madhava was moved from the Lotus building to the new temple, then they stood there majestic on an altar. Before, Radha Madhava were just on the ground, on a little slab, slightly raised, and you stood there as far as we stand now from the Shringadev, But they were not high, and it felt so close to Radha Madhava, and now they were so up. Anyway, they stood there up on their altar. The Astasakis were not there yet. Just Lalita Vishaka. And then Pankajangri, he came down from the altar as he saw me. He was in the middle of doing something on the altar, but he came down onto the stage and he saw me. And he says, "Why are you fighting so much with Satatanya?" And I go, "Not in front of the deities." And he said, "Why not?" They know everything anyway. And I was still hesitant, that in case, because I was still a little angry. And I was afraid I might say something inappropriate, in front of the deities. I thought maybe later. But they had this, so that they're living with the deities, so intimate, so much, like I said, living at the back of the pujari room, living with the deities, living so, at home, right, with the deities. So much so, at home. And such so intimately part of their life, part of their whole world, part of their vision, part of their outlook, part of you hear all these stories that Pankajangri tells about the deities, and there are so many, so many, and about one. Mostly the workers. In Mayapur we had many workers that we are paying. And they're mostly from the surrounding villages. So the Jagannath temple is right in the middle of a Muslim area. So all the neighbors are Muslims, everyone. And many of our workers in Mayapur were anyway Muslims, right? Many. And even some of these Muslims remember how their grandfather or great-grandfather converted to Islam under pressure because they slapped a tax which had to be paid by Hindus. So many of the poor people became Muslims. So anyhow, so this one Muslim was seeing the glittering earrings of Subhadra, and he was just... There was no one, so he reached out and tried to snatch them when the big white one just like bang slapped him, right? Slapped him really hard. He told the story because the next day he came and brought an offering for the deity. So there are many stories like this, and Pankajangri is the source of telling these stories. Jananivas tells them also, but Pankajangri especially. As you remember, maybe Pankajangri as the Pujari of Nrsingadev, I particularly remember him from this Jagannath Mandir because he was always so absorbed in these stories of Lord Jagannath, and he never tired of taking people there, and he never tired of being there. He had a very close relationship with those deities, who we know the story how they came to ISKCON. And not far from there was then the house of Kolavecha Sridhar. And this was Pankajangri, one of Pankajangri's favorite stories. He could tell it 100 times with the same gusto, like again and again, Kolavecha Sridhar. And we remember, Kolavecha Sridhar was a very poor man, very poor. Kolavecha Sridhar was simply, picking some leaves. He had nothing. So Bengal is full of banana trees, full everywhere. Right? So he just cut some banana leaves and then cut them up into plates, right? And people would eat from banana leaf plates. So, you don't want to take the trouble of go and get some banana leaves, right? So he just sold banana leaves. And then some he made in cups. He also made cups from leaves, just called a dona, which you use for liquids, right? So everyone was using this. So, so you go to the market and you buy this. Saves you the trouble of going to cut it yourself. Right? So in this way he made something. And then Lord Chaitanya would daily come and would never pay. He would never pay and said, "Oh, I know you, Sridhar. I know you are hiding your money. You are such a miser. I know, you are acting as if you have nothing, but I know very well. No. I'm not paying for these leaves, I'm not paying." And he would just take, and it would become a whole fight. He would fight every day with Lord Chaitanya and Sridhar. And on one occasion, Sridhar would be chanting the name of the Lord all night, and the neighbors would say, "This Sridhar, he's just howling all night. He's so hungry. He's so hungry. He can't sleep. He's crying all night." And once Lord Chaitanya came there, and Lord Chaitanya asked him for water. And Sridhar was poor, so he had only one pot. And some pot, and it was all dinted, a metal pot. It was all dinted and old and he used it for everything, even when he was going to the field to relieve himself. So, and he was using it for drinking. That was all he had. So Lord Chaitanya wanted water, and then Sridhar said, "No, not from this pot, no." And Lord Chaitanya, by force, drank the water. And Pankajangri would tell the story again and again, and his eyes would become start to light up in great excitement as he go, and he grabbed the pot and drank the water. He became very, very lively on such occasions. He definitely was the one who was always eager to go on a parikrama. Pankajangri would many times. Another place he liked very much was Momgachi. Of course, Momgachi is a special place of Vasudev Datta, the one who wanted to take the karma of the whole world. It's a very sweet place, and it's particularly the place full of compassion. And Pankajangri and Janani Vas would regularly go there, and sort of was almost an extension, of ISKCON there. It was run by a Gaudiya Mat devotee, Jagat Bandhu, who was so nice and had such a service attitude, old man, so close. And that's also the birthplace nearby of Vrindavan Das Thakur. And Pankajangri would also always be eager. Whenever we would go to Momgachi, Pankajangri, "Oh, I'm coming." He really liked Momgachi, and would speak from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. If one book that really inspired him, I think the Chaitanya Bhagavat was definitely something he read a lot. a lot. We never had it, you know. I mean, nowadays, yeah, you have all these books, Chaitanya Bhagavat. The Chaitanya Bhagavat, we got it like in the after 85. Yeah? We didn't have it before. I think 86 or something like that, 85, 86. Because I was in Mayapur when it came. And I'm the kind of guy, as soon as it comes out, I'm one of the first people to get it, right? I'm like that. And I would just go after it. And I remember reading the Chaitanya Bhagavat translation of Sarvabhavana Prabhu, a devotee from Calcutta, and how we... and Pangajangri just took to that Chaitanya Bhagavat, and just like that became the book he would often refer to, often tell with great gusto these stories about Sridhar Mayapur. Both the brothers very much live in that vision of the Dham. Once they asked Jananivas, and they asked him, Jananivas, about also some story about Radha Madhava. Said, and Pangajangri said, well, there are not so many stories about Radha Madhava, you know. And then Pangajangri said, then Jananivas said that he said, you know, the miracle of everything that we are part of, this whole movement, is part of Radha Madhava's pastime. Somehow or other, they were the pujaris of Radha Madhava, right? Because those were the deities, right? Started with the small Radha Madhava, right? That were actually stolen, as we remember, the Astadhatu deities, Prabhupada's Radha Madhava deities. So yeah, those were the deities that they worshipped. And in one sense, Tamal Krishna Maharaj once, he was glorifying the two brothers. It was a feast, a prasadam feast, and in Mayapur they offer like 500 preparations or something to the deities. And I remember they had some arrangements. Senior devotees were first getting all the Mahaprasadam on the veranda of the Lotus building, and somehow or other they let me in also, Billy the Kid. You know, and I was there, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was going, start to glorify the two brothers and start saying they are actually rich basis. They're rich basis because they're always serving Radha Madhava. And so they are in Vrindavan, actually. There's no difference. And he's starting to get into this whole non-different thing about the two dhams. And then he started to test us all if we were all Vrijbasis. And we all had to say, do the Vrijbasi saying, which they used to do at the Radhasham Kua, in Vrindavan, on the Parikram path, not far from the Krishna Balaram Mandir, there is a well, and it is known as the Radhasham Kua. And traditionally, anybody going around the Parikram of Vrindavan will go there to this Kua, this well, and will just call out in the well, Radhe! And anyway, we did this, and it became a competition. We did a Radhesham competition, right? And, with great stalwarts, right? With great stalwarts, and everyone did like a serious Radhe, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj let others do first, and when Tamal Krishna Maharaj started doing his Radhe Sham, I mean, his arms were moving, his head was shaking, it was just a serious Radhe Sham. I mean, that was a Radhe Sham and a half, I would say, right? And then, finally, the two brothers, they did it together because they were twins, right? They did everything together. So together, and they jumped up. They jumped up and they start shaking their arms and dance like this. And just, Sham, it was a transcendental competition. They were dancers, They were dancers. They would always dance. Somehow or other, they stayed like boys. Sometimes you used to think they're like the four Kumaras, right? Like the four Kumaras who stayed 5 years old and never get older. We thought they're like that, They're just not getting older. What's going on? They just stay boys. They never, they were like boys for so long, right? And always dancing like boys, like brahmacharis. They never got into that the sannyasi mood, the senior leader. No, they're just brahmacharis with the brahmacharis, and they always stayed like that. It's like in Mayapur there is this ritualistic way of watering tulsi, where the senior devotees, they go around tulsi first and water tulsi, and it's a whole thing, and the brothers never partook in that. They could, of course, by their status, by their seniority, but they didn't like that. They just walked on the outside, with all the devotees, with the crowds, right? I mean, walking on the. If you don't take advantage of this water tulsi first thing, then the next thing, the Bengali crowds, right? And it's no joke. I mean, that's serious business. They all water tulsi together. Right? there is this thing in Mayapur, doing things together. I watched the video of of the cremation yesterday, and then it is so Bengali, doing everything together, there's all these people and all these voices were there. So it wasn't orderly and formal, imagine a funeral in the Western world is something official and it's very serious now, not so loud, there can be nothing like that, I was watching the whole thing and hearing all these voices, and but they were so much part of that, they were. It's I joined in Vrindavan and then later went to Mayapur, and there was a difference in Vrindavan. Yes, there were all these devotees, and they were all devotees of the Dham, and we all felt great fortune to be there. But Vrindavan is the place of the rugged individuals. It is the place of Ayendra, red-bearded revolutionary kirtan chanter, right? Or Dinabandhu Baba, who is also his own tattva, has his own. It's that's Vrindavan. All these rugged individuals, and but Mayapur is different. Mayapur is the family. So much the family, everything is the family, and the whole of Mayapur is a big family, and it's like it's amazing. And it's like I also, because I stayed in Mayapur for quite a while, they accepted me as in the family, and then they keep on asking me, and they don't care that I'm a sannyasi. How's Mataji? You know, I go like I'm a sannyasi. You know, yeah, but like that's okay. That's we know you're a sannyasi, but anyway, how is she? It's the family, It's such a family mood in Mayapur, and they became so much part of that whole Mayapur family, right? They were not just the senior devotees; they're just like, they were just so much part of the family, and they had that kind of a nature, that they could do that. They were so accessible, especially Pangajangri was so accessible. Pangajangri also liked to travel. When any of the two brothers ever had to leave, Pangajangri would go, And because Pangajangri liked to go. He liked to go. He liked, although he loved being in Mayapur, and Mayapur was in him, and wherever he came, he brought Mayapur. But he liked to go and preach, and you'd meet him, right, in Zurich. He liked Zurich. He spent time in Switzerland. He liked it. He also liked the Balkan, right? He would always come to the Balkan. You meet him in the Serbian festival, the Serbian summer camp, and again, he just brought that simple Mayapur with him, because it had become so much part of him, that whole simple culture. So in the Balkan also, he'd just sleep on his mat, and he'd just do all the same things that he would do in India, right? All those things, that people do. I mean, scraping their tongue in public. He could do all these things that become part of him completely, right? Some people, when they move to India, they set up a whole survival environment, There's like the flat, right? There's the AC, there's the scooter, there's the, and there's the whole West, that they brought with them, a little Western bubble, and then from there, and that's where they live, and they go out into the Dham. But Pangajangri, no. Completely absorbed the whole culture. It became him. He just like that, right? He just became like that. Right? Jayapataka Maharaj is also like that, Like once Bhavananda, who is also from the old family in Mayapur, told me, and the way he would speak, and he'd say, Jayapataka. He wouldn't say it. He's like his brother. He says, Jayapataka, he's a Bengali. He used to say. He became Bengali completely. So, although the brothers never really learned to speak Bengali properly, right? Because British people oftentimes find it difficult to learn other languages. No, it's like that. It's I guess when your native tongue is English, you sort of think, well, let's try again, Are you sure you don't understand? So, whereas like, yeah, so they never really learned. A few broken words Bengali he could manage, Pankajangri, but nothing serious. Amazing, just. But that was not at all a impediment. They were just totally part of the family, and basically the local saints, right? The local saints, and as the local saints and as the pujaris, they would also be there in the community of Mayapur, right? I mean, anybody who invited them, they would be there. Right? And they knew everybody, and they knew everybody's kids, and like this, It's like, okay, and then and they'd go for blessings, and then Pankajangri especially, like sort of, and how is, how is this one, how is that one? So they very much were part of that big family, and very much creating that Mayapur family atmosphere, and very much that mood of ISKCON as a family, which is, and then in his travels around the world also treating everyone just like a family member, like Nityananda says, when he was a new Bhakta, Pangajangri sat next to him and just start talking to him and so on, very casual. Yeah, because you're part of the family, right? That's how it is. He is a family man. And then Nitai's brother, he just gave him a name, Gopal. That's what they do, They would do sanskaras. They would do, like someone's sick. Yes, okay, I'll pray to the deities for you. Never like, well, we are brahmacharis, Mataji. There was nothing like that, right? Although being brahmacharis, very kind of close to family life, not that ashram difference. So yes, these two transcendental brothers were part of Krishna's plan. Krishna's plan to establish this movement, to push it forward tremendously, and we see, not only did they worship the deities, but we see the reciprocation of the deity, the sharing with us how the deity is reciprocating with that worship, and basically they followed this Prabhupada standard. Cleanliness, simplicity, and punctuality. Out of the three, the last one was the most difficult. There the GBC would sometimes help them, because I remember how they were dressing Radha Madhava, the two brothers, and they were like a few minutes late, and Bhavananda, who was very paka, would go like, they're late every day, and he just walked up to the altar and pulled open the curtain. He just pulled open the curtain, and for the darshan, and I saw Pangajangri and I guess Janani was, I can't remember, and some other pujaris flying. I didn't know they flew away. The pin cushions and everything, were still there, and sort of like, but that was it, But they could take that, because they had that mood of accepting authority. They were from another ISKCON, and okay, Bhavananda was the authority. Prabhupada had established him. That was it. So they didn't. They were not upset. They accepted it. All right, he did this to us, and it worked, because the rest of the week they were in time. So yeah, it was an amazing. They were. Pankajangri is one of the pioneers of the Hare Krishna movement. And the other day I mentioned that we are living by the grace of the pioneers. We're living by the grace of the service that the devotees have done before us. It is by their grace that now there is so much worship in Mayapur, right? I mean, you just sometimes wonder, is it really humanly possible to go to everything? Right? Is it humanly even possible to follow all the programs in Mayapur? There's no end. There's no end. This is Mayapur, the abode of abundance. The abode of abundance. When we're talking about miracles in relation to Panchatattva, I remember one miracle in relation to Panchatattva that I witnessed, and that was before Panchatattva were installed, right? Every year in Mayapur, it's the same thing, you know, like at the end of winter, they start to plant so many flowers, this, that, and then the flowers start to come out, right? So at the end of winter, the flowers came out, and they have these chrysanthemums, you know, which are like usually this big, right, in Mayapur. I would say this big, something like that, right? But that year, before the Panchatattva appeared, they were this big. And I tell you, I saw it. They were enormous. They were just enormous. The Dham was celebrating and getting ready for the big Panchatattva and making extra big flowers. There's no doubt about it. The Dham is so transcendental like that. We were on a boat, and maybe Pankajangri was on there too, on the way to Momgachi. And as we're going past the site, and we're chanting a kirtan, you know, and with long notes, you know. I can't remember if it was something like Hari Ramo, Hari Ram, maybe that tune, long. And then there was a crow, and the crow was also going in time, you know. What a transcendental abode. Sometimes we were going on the way with kirtan to Momgachi on the boat, and now you can't go by boat anymore. They blocked the canal. There was a canal. They put a dam. You know, we used to go by boat, and sometimes dolphins would dance in front of the boat. You know, 2 dolphins in front of the boat as we're going. Amazing. So how transcendental is that Dham, and how nice are the servants of the Lord, and how much mercy they received. So, as the theme of my lecture was the ordinary person and the transcendental person at the same time, I'd like to say in so many ways Pankajangri was very ordinary, very accessible, very human, and he always stayed like that. A simple person, an ordinary person like everyone. And in another way, who was he? Who was he? Where did he come from? Who are these brothers? Who were they in their last life? But if you go like that, then you wonder anyway, who is who in this movement? Who were they anyway? Right? Who were they anyway in their last life? One thing we know for sure, they were extraordinary personalities in that way. They received extraordinary mercy, and they just did extraordinary service. And they've conquered. And they are right there in the heart of this movement, in Sridhar Mayapur, and right there in the heart of all the devotees of this movement. And therefore, it is important that we look at the lives of such devotees, that we look at their lives, and that we ourselves. And it's not that Pankajangri was always perfect, that he never made a mistake. He did make some mistakes, but it never took him away from the lotus feet of the Lord. And so his life has been a perfect life, a life of success. He was an amazing devotee, and yet also a human being, like we all are. And devotees like Pankajangri, they show us that it's possible for ordinary people like us, right, to live a pure and transcendental life and to go back to Godhead at the end of this life. So, we are all most fortunate, just as Pankajangri was most fortunate. Prabhupada did help him to cross the stream. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it that Pankajangri is now smiling upon us from the spiritual world. And there's no doubt about it that we are now praying to his lotus feet for mercy, so that we, in due course of time, may join him there. Thank you very much. Pankajangri Prabhu ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. I don't know. Anyone has something to add or something to the... Please. Ananda Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just have a question concerning, you mentioned Radha Madhava, that they were stolen. Maybe you can tell this story?
Oh,
or do you think it's too...
well, yeah, I mean, it happened. It was just not nice. But there was a dacoit attack in Mayapur. The exact year, I mean, I'm fuzzy in years, you know, like, I mean, my memory is such that when you ask me what year it was, then I need a servant to tell me what year was it. You should check it. And he is really good at dates. And he always beats me with dates. Anyway, whatever year it was, in the 80s, early 80s it happened. And Mayapur is still remote, and it was more remote then. Yeah? It was much smaller then. You know, there were not that many buildings, so it was a remote project. And yeah, some dacoits came, you know, and they attacked in the night. And because they thought the deity was made of gold, although they were made of astadhatu, a mixture of 8 metals. And they stole the deities, and that they managed to steal the deities. They came in by force, and they had coconut bombs. You know, they do that in Bengal. They empty the coconut and then fill it up with explosives, and so yeah, this is another Bengali pastime. So like that, you know. They had coconut bombs, and it's just that time that Raghava Pandit, who was in charge of Namahata, and Raghava Pandit, he went after them he took a spear from one of the guards and went after them to get the deities, and they threw a coconut bomb at him, and he lost his leg, and became Bhakti Raghav Swami. 2 weeks, you know, like he was only in the hospital 3 days. They took his leg off, boom, and shortly after he took sannyas. Shortly after. So determined. So yeah, these are all amazing devotees from these early days. Amazing devotees. They're in Mayapur. It was tough. But they stuck it out. Now we have a whole dacoit response team. You know. On the long building there are bricks, piles of bricks lying ready, pieces of stone. There's a whole attack groups, commandos, if any. We have a police station now. So now it will be more difficult. But we're ready for any dacoit attack now. And that's why Nrsingadev was installed, to kind of protect us from such things. Yes.
There's the story that when this attack was, when they stole the deities, Pankajangri Prabhu, he was the one who took a gun from a god and was shooting after the dacoits. This also shows that he was more the practical one.
Yes. As far as the gun,
would never have done this.
No. There was a gun, and actually Pankajangri had shot a gun earlier also. There were 2 attacks. There was the earliest attack and the later attack, and there was actually a gun kept upstairs. And actually, Pankajangri was the gunman. Yeah, he was the gunman in the temple. Yeah. next to you.
I heard from Vedasagar one story about Pankajang and Jananivas, that they were always in the 80s asking for more funds for garlands. And the management didn't want to give it because there was anyway not enough Lakshmi. And then there was this kind of like final meeting where they realized there's almost no Lakshmi there. And they realized, okay, we'll give them more Lakshmi for garlands. And according to Vedasagar Prabhu, since then, because the argument was, he's Radha Madhava, if we give them garlands, they will give us everything,
Yeah.
So then they did give him this last budget for garlands, and since then Mayapur became very opulent.
Uh-huh. And now there's the garden, right? The flower garden, and it sits right in the center, right? And it's a place, where we go so when we were doing the master plan, it's like it's on the master plan. So looking at, this garden has to move, It's in terms of the layout, the roads, we're supposed to make the Chaitanya Avenue, and Chaitanya Avenue is supposed to go from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house to the yoga pit, right? As the central avenue from Mayapur. So I said, it has to go, and boy, what a fight we had. But Pankajangri was really attached to that garden, and he was really personally taking care of that. And he did all these dealings with the gardeners, not only the garlands and more money, but he was he knew everything about it, right? Everything about the prices of flowers and the whole Bengali thing, how they weigh them, how they check them. He was of course Jananivas knew these things too, but Pankajangri especially was doing these things. Yes.
First of all, thank you very much, Maharaj, for your wonderful katha. It really transported me to Vrindavan, to Mayapur for 1 hour. Very, very wonderful. I just want to add this one little thing, that what kind of consoles my heart a little bit about the pain of losing him from the Mayapur community is that I find it so wonderful that he actually made it back to Mayapur.
Yeah.
And he left his body there, because I would have just been so much in pain if he would have left his body there in Calcutta in the ICU ward.
I was sitting on the edge of my seat, he was going to Calcutta, and I was going, what's he doing? What's he doing? How can he go to Calcutta in this condition? He might die in Calcutta.
Yes.
That's what I felt, and I just
exactly
think, what's he doing?
Yes.
Right? Anyway, he did that as a little detour, and then...
Yes. Because so many times in the past it has happened that people then leave their body.
Yeah, when I got shot in Vrindavan, last thing I said before I couldn't speak anymore was, not out of the Dham. Don't take me out of the Dham. So I was thinking, what's he doing? How can he leave the Dham? But anyway, he did it and he came back.
And also I read a little description when he came back to Mayapur, how he was welcomed by all the devotees. I think it was even at night.
At night, 1 a.m.,
yes,
1 a.m.
Right? Yes. And they opened, the altars, and he was waving, and this was just so wonderful for me, because especially a personality like him should not leave anywhere else except Mayapur,
Yeah.
And this was a very glorious and wonderful departure.
Yeah, and also they see how much he was a revered family member of the community of the Lord, and so much so, and how the devotees also reciprocated by arranging the darshan and everything. Yes, a lot of loving exchange, love from the deities, love from Prabhupada, blessings. Yes, come to the Dham, Lord Chaitanya, come back, and the devotees. A lot of love there. The holy Dham, the abode of love. Yeah, Thank you very much. Pankajangri Prabhu ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled family members of Pankajangri Prabhu. Hare Krishna.